Even though I have limited knowledge on or interest in the railways of Japan, I was still intrigued when I first heard of Running Train, a new railway simulator game set in the land of the rising sun. I went into this hoping that the new game would be a welcome change from the nonsense one often comes across on the train sim world scene, no thanks to Dovetail Games and their business practices, amongst other frustrating things. Running Train was made by Novotetsu Games, who is apparently a solo developer. Bear that in mind as we go along. It's currently available as early access on Steam, having been released on the 25th of May 2026, and it costs 33 New Zealand dollars at full price, but I got it for $29.69 through a 10% discount that lasted from initial launch to the 1st of June. Even at full price, I would argue that this new game is reasonably priced, especially when compared to even just the standard edition of Train Sim World 6, let alone individual DLC items for that game. For comparison, a single TSW6 route add-on will typically set you back $57 or even $64.49 these days, and the standard edition of the base game costs $71, or whatever the equivalent is in your local currency. Do with that information what you will. As mentioned in this video's title, Running Train is built on Unreal Engine 5. To be honest, I'm a total dunce when it comes to knowing/understanding how video games work under the hood, so to speak, but I do know that UE5 is a more up-to-date game engine than UE4, which is what Train Sim World has always used. Quite frankly, I was very impressed by this new game's graphics, as, in my opinion, the game often looks so realistic that I could forgive people for thinking that it's real life if they were presented with what are actually in-game screenshots without any prior context. As for what you get for your money, there are two different lines, namely the Fukugawa line and Sankai Main Line, for a total route length of only 40 kilometers, and to put it mildly, the scenery is very well done considering the fact that this is a fictional route. I prefer running in spring, when the cherry blossoms are flowering. Meanwhile, 4 different train types are included, and although they are based on real designs, they have fictional designations in-game for some reason. There's the Kiha 85 diesel multiple unit, labelled as DC 8500, 1963 era KO 5000 series electric multiple unit, labelled as KR5000, the 113 series EMU, or HR1100, and 115 series EMU, or HR1500. Personally, I reckon the HR1100 and HR1500 bear a very strong resemblance to the Kiha 40 diesel railcar. It's worth noting that none of the in-game trains, or the stations for that matter, have any kind of realistic branding as standard, presumably due to licensing restrictions. By default, key bindings for the controls are set up differently from what I'm used to in Train Simulator Classic and TSW6. Possibly the hardest part of driving the trains in Running Train is trying to keep up with the tight timetables. This is Japan after all. It's either keeping up with the timetables or working out/remembering where to start applying the brakes so as not to overshoot the stop markers at stations, and that's to say nothing of the speed limit warnings that sometimes catch me off guard. The free camera controls are different from what I'm used to, in the sense that you can't adjust the train's throttle and brakes in the free camera, and the keys I'm used to pressing for the throttle will actually move the camera. Dare say this arrangement will take some getting used to. As for language support, the game currently supports only English and Japanese. When you go to drive a train, you'll have a total of 42 services to choose from, with 10 on the Fukugawa line and 32 on the Sankai Main Line. the latter being a line that runs along the coast for a significant portion of its length. The services range in duration from 6 to 44 minutes, and I also noticed that there's another 3 lines currently shown as locked in the menu. At present, the short route coverage and low service count limit replay values somewhat, and although they won't be out for a fair while yet, route extensions are in the pipeline, just like oil and gas. The game's performance is reasonably smooth on my end, averaging between 35 and 50 frames per second with very little, if any, stuttering, and no crashes to desktop so far. I'll put my PC specs on screen or in the description if I remember to do so, and for the record, I left the default settings largely unchanged, apart from lowering the motion blur amount to 50%. I also changed the key bindings for train controls to match the settings in TSW, mainly for the sake of muscle memory. Come to think of it, if you were trying to remember New Zealand's famous green shell, that would also be a form of muscle memory. At one point, while driving the KR5000, in this custom reskin based on the Adelaide Metro 2000 class, I realised that, when you're in the free camera, pressing the 8 key changes the season. Meanwhile, one of the ferries, which I spotted on the coastal section, reminds me of the Fulton Ferry from Tugs. Props to anyone else who knows that show. There are stop markers at all the stations, and these indicate where you should stop your train depending on how many coaches it has. You'll have to make sure to stop in the right place, otherwise the doors won't open, and you'll have to move the train forward or backward to line up with the marker if you overshoot or undershoot. There's also a scoring system that judges your driving skills, but if you prefer a more casual experience and don't want to deal with trying to maintain a high score, you can enable free practice before driving a train. For some reason, I initially read Score Multiplier as Score Markiplier, even though I don't watch Markiplier. When I saw that you can make custom liveries for Running Train, I thought that meant the game had a built-in livery designer, but that appears to not be the case. Instead, you have to use an external software, such as Photoshop, and can change between default or custom liveries in-game, but for each train, you can only have 2 custom texture sets loaded in at a time, alongside 3 default liveries. For my first attempt at a custom reskin, I tried recreating the old Transmetro livery, as seen on the DM/D class electric multiple units, also known as English Electrics, that used to run in Wellington, the capital city of New Zealand. And for my second attempt, I tried recreating the London Underground livery. This reskin was specifically based on the 1996 stock, which runs on the Jubilee line and makes an unusual noise. One thing you'll notice while playing this game is the fact that each train handles differently from the other 3. When it comes to the short services on the Fukugawa line, I prefer driving the KR5000 over the HR1100, since the former has a 5-notch throttle and straight air brake, which allow for more precise control over your speed. Meanwhile, the HR1100 has a 4-notch throttle and manually lapped brakes. I do not like manually lapped brakes. As for the DC8500, she has a similar throttle and brake lever setup to the KR5000, not to mention surprisingly good acceleration and braking rates for a DMU. And as for the HR1500, she has a 5-notch throttle and similar brakes to the DC8500 and KR5000. It's ironic that the HR1100 is my least favourite train to drive in this game, because her yellow with blue stripe livery might just be my favourite of all the default liveries across the 4 trains. As impressive as this game is overall, I still reckon there's room for improvement. For one thing, I found the HR1100's throttle a bit too sensitive to keyboard inputs, to the point where I've often ended up unintentionally setting the throttle to full power when I only wanted notch 2, and setting the throttle all the way back to idle when I only intended to reduce power by 1 notch. And for another, it appears that all 4 trains have the same horn sound, which disappoints me somewhat. At present, there are no passenger figures present on the stations, so it's like Thomas and the Magic Railroad without the live-action actors green screened in. And I hope that passenger figures will be added to this game at some point, and that they won't turn out like the infamously glitchy NPCs that you'll find in TSW. So far, the only human figure I've seen in Running Train is the train driver. Although the platforms and train interiors are deserted, the environment doesn't feel totally lifeless, as there are still some cars driving around on the roads that you can see from the railway. When you're setting up a service, your only options for seasons are winter and spring. I question why there are no options for summer and autumn as well. On the whole, I'm of the opinion that Novatetsu Games has done a great job with this new game, to the point where I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It's impressive to see what can be achieved by a solo developer, and with that in mind, I don't see how Dovetail Games could have an excuse for the shambles that they've let Train Sim World become, and DTG has a big development team and all. As someone who wanted to see TSW reach its full potential, but is very frustrated with the way things have been going with that game, especially recently, I hope the existence of Running Train can light a fire under Dovetail's bottom, in a manner of speaking. In other words, maybe it'll give the silly sods from Chatham a much needed incentive to up their game and sort out the buggy / spaghetti coated mess that is TSW6. Only time will tell, I suppose. Going forward, I wish the solo developer behind Running Train good luck with this new game, and if you stuck around to the end of the video, you and a popular New Zealand biscuit company that was recently taken over by the fat man from Family Guy who wears green trousers and a white shirt. It's Peter Griffins.